Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Engaging Patients as Consumers. Our webinar is presented by Cincom Systems and IBM. My name is Donna Banks, and I am the Senior Marketing Manager for Cincom's Customer Experience Management Solution, your host for today's webinar. Before I introduce today's presenters, I need to address a few housekeeping items. This webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes. We would ask that anyone who is using a speakerphone to please hit your mute button. If you would like to ask a question at any time during the presentation, please type your question in the chat area located in the lower right of your screen and send it to host. We will try to get to as many as we can at the end of the session, time permitting. And now for today's webinar. I would like to introduce to you our speakers. It is my pleasure to introduce Robert Hoyt. Robert is in his third decade of healthcare industry experience. Formerly CEO of a company delivering primary care nationwide, Bob has had consulting roles in technology, marketing, sales, mergers and acquisitions, and healthcare consumer strategy. He is currently Healthcare Solutions Executive for the North American IBM Software Group. In this capacity, Bob works with customers to define the technology required to leverage business opportunities generated by the healthcare transformation. Brian Flagg has 31 years of IT industry experience, including transforming and leading global contact centers for IBM and Target, as well as managing very large technical support contact centers for Fortune 500 companies. He has written extensively on support center excellence and has been recognized for his thought leadership. He currently manages business development for Cincom's Customer Experience Management Solution. At this time, please welcome Brian Flagg.
Thanks very much, Donna. I want to first talk a little bit before I introduce Bob and get Bob up to go through the current state of the industry and some of the challenges and why we really can't wait for the whole ACO debate to time out. So I want to talk a little bit about the Cincom and IBM partnership and then just a couple words about Cincom. Cincom has been an IBM partner and is currently an IBM Premier Partner. We've been a partner for 14 years. And really, partnership started way back in 1968 with the founding Cincom CEO, having began his career at IBM and left IBM in 1968. But there might be something to this software business, and might be able to make a go at selling software. And so he did that. And you may recall some of the mainframe software from Cincom, such as Mantris, Supra. Back then in those days, and database technology, and overall, there are over 800 joint Cincom and IBM customers. So we do have a long history of working together, long-term partnership. And as well, IBM distributes Cincom technology in one of its pivotal offerings. Again, Cincom Synchrony, 2011 Beacon Award winner. Smarter Commerce launch partner. And if we could turn the slide down, I'll talk a little bit about Cincom then. Cincom, of course, headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, that's Cincom. We have offices in 16 countries, 700 employees. We are global, have clients on 6 continents. And we cover a number of verticals, healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, government, retail, etc. Again, we're an IBM Premier Partner, and Cincom is certified in several IBM frameworks, including healthcare, retail, insurance, energy, and the banking and government sector. And so just a few words about Cincom. Cincom is a private company, privately held company. Again, about 700 employees worldwide. Next slide now. And just by way of agenda for today's webinar, we'll be going over the industry and IBM's healthcare vision. That will be by Bob Hoyt. Donna introduced a few moments ago. And I'll be taking you through Synchrony's industry-leading guidance and the value proposition that IBM and Cincom bring to the table. We'll talk about a few success stories, and then Randy Saunders will then turn over driving and go through a couple of demonstrations. And then, as Donna stated, we'll leave about 10 minutes open at the end of the webinar for question and answer. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob Hoyt from IBM. Bob, go ahead.
Okay. So from an IBM perspective, we see that we're entering the age of the empowered and engaged healthcare consumer. And again, put your phones on mute if you would, please. There's 50 million new consumers entering the individual marketplace, primarily through public exchanges, but also through private exchanges. We're seeing a 40% decline in participation in group-based healthcare, and the amount of private healthcare spending increasing enormously, leading to situations where consumers have unprecedented access to information through the internet. You've probably done it yourself when you've got an appointment with your physician. That you look things up on the internet. You walk in with a handful of questions. Social networking and mobile commerce are dramatically changing the dynamics. What we've seen in banking, for example, is that there's more influence in the social media than there is in all the advertising that banks do with their customers. So when you transfer that kind of knowledge to a healthcare setting, the type of experience that you provide that patient, in addition to being clinically correct, is going to largely determine whether they have loyalty with you or not. And that consumers have a growing expectation of service, quality, and value. And we've already seen that soar in the financial world, and it's going to follow the same patterns in healthcare. And all of this is wrapped around the changing, the entire healthcare ecosystem. Virtually every brick in the building, so to speak, has to be re-examined and repurposed, not only in the care delivery side of things, but in the financing, the payer, and insurance kinds of components. Let's go to the next slide, Donna, and it has a slightly different view of the same message. Here's some more of a specific transition. We see a lot of migration out of the 160 million participants in commercial group products, and we see them getting distributed across several channels, if you will. What's consistent here is the growth of the individual market, and combining that with the power of the consumer leads us to this conclusion that healthcare is in the beginnings of a retailization process where the individual is going to be the buyer and the consumer, and we're going to move away from this two-step process. Even if the Supreme Court decides against ACA as it currently exists, we still have a broken healthcare system. Broken in the sense that we deliver the best acute care in the world, but not so much on the preventative end of things. So, best place in the world to be if you have a heart transplant need, not the best place to be if you want to prevent the need for a heart transplant. So, Donna, let's move on to the next slide. So, at IBM, what we see as the sweet spot in this transformation is the patient-centered medical home concept. And I'm sure we all know that this is team-based care delivery models. And everything that we do at IBM is wrapped around this concept of care delivery. And we apply that to payers, we apply that to integrated delivery networks, large IPAs, and to smaller physician populations. So it's all about reducing harm, reducing cost, handling the transitions of care, and driving away from the consumption-based model that we've been in for the last 40 years and moving into a value-based, outcomes-based model. Next slide, please, Donna. So, it's appropriate to talk about what are some of the things wrapped around patient-centered medical homes. So, here's some things that the Office of Personnel Management, is putting in its definition of, what an accountable care patient should expect from an accountable care organization. all of these things are, are our ability to deliver them without technology is very limited. A lot of things you can do better, and you don't need technology, but in order to optimize on these things, to be able to move data around and collaborate and do that handoff and the collaboration of data, all of these things need to be enabled from a technology perspective. And of course, IBM and its partners are there to provide these types of things. Next slide, Don. It's also appropriate to talk, in terms of defining the care. So we talk about superb access. We need to make it easier to make appointments and select the day and the time. Examples of this from work we've done in other countries are, while you're in with the doctor, you can make an appointment to your MRI and find, the 3 locations that are closest to your work and make an appointment over the connected features in those countries. We're driving towards the same kinds of capabilities here. Because of our size, scaling some of these solutions we've done in other countries is more difficult. But the goal of connecting people is to do just that. You talk about patient engagement. We went through something called managed care in the 80s and the 90s, and a lot of people would say that did not work very well. And I think the lesson learned out of that is that it's not the doctor's job to manage the care. It's not the insurance company's job to manage the care. It's the patient's job to manage his or her care. Now, doctors are trusted advisors, and insurance companies can bring data and the financial impact, and so you get into a collaboration, that is needed. Then we start talking about clinical information systems. So the government has put a lot of incentives in place to provide incentive for caregiving organizations to move into electronic medical records and electronic health records. And this is creating a lot of machine-readable data that can be moved around. Right? But the last count I saw, there's 662 EMRs approved by OnChip, each with a different data model and a different clinical information model, and so we've got stuff that we can move around, but we're still a ways from making it usable. So again, technology comes into play there. Care coordination is all about the handoffs. I leave the primary care doctor and I go to the specialist. And the ideal situation is that data follows the patient, and no matter what technology is managing that next medical event for that patient, we make the best data available that is possible. And team-based care is wrapped around getting away from the old model where nobody did anything without the doctor's permission, and getting into, everybody works at the top of their license. So if I've got a patient who comes in with an itch under their cast, I don't need the doctor to tell them how to scratch it. The nurse can probably do that better. However, as we all know, reimbursement rules say that if the doctor doesn't see the patient, you don't get paid. So there's some give and take, some reimbursement model changes that need to come in. Gathering patient feedback. This is where the social medias come in, with the collaborative technologies of blog and instant messaging and those types of things. And part of the technology's job here is to crawl through that stuff and look for the useful information and bring that back to the leadership for use. And then helping the public access information. If anybody's ever gone out there and done a Google search on diabetes, you get enough information to last you for the rest of your life. And it would be nice to be able to use the information that we have about a patient to effectively filter that publicly available information to make it available. So these are the kinds of things that IBM is looking to solve and working with patients on. Next slide, please, Don. So what all this says is the power is shifting to the consumer, both as a member of a health plan and as a patient, in a care delivery system. So in response to this shifting power base, we need to do some things. We need to understand and anticipate the behaviors needed and the insights that can be gathered from analytics and the like. We need to adapt products and services and benefits based on the changing healthcare needs of the patient and the patient's family. And we need to market, sell, and deliver right products at the right time for the right price in an adjustable way. If you think about benefit structures that we've made so complex over the last 30 years, we need to get back to something that's much simpler, such as the base major med construct that we had 30 years ago. And then service. I hesitate to say that it's flawless. It's certainly what you strive for, but there's a reason why we call it practice medicine. You strive for as much consistency and predictability as you can to drive that loyalty through enhancing the patient experience or the member experience, depending on where you are. Next slide, please, Tom. So, from a provider perspective, the payers become your new strategic suppliers. Payers are developing wellness programs wrapped around a financial model and selling the idea of keeping you well as opposed to financing your acute care visits. This means that they now become strategic partners because the provider side of this equation actually has to deliver on those promises. So this slide is helpful to look at from the provider perspective, and that this is what the payers are thinking about and the problems that they're wrestling with, and synchronizing what the payers need with what the providers need is essential in this ongoing solution. Next slide, please, Don. So what this does is it leads us at IBM to develop a very high-level system transformation type of strategy. So you see value and transparency with sustainability across the bottom. You can also imply time through that. It's hard to put a fixed time barrier on this because different parts of the ecosystem will move at a different speed. But essentially we move from core functionality, basic ability to move information from point A to point B through care delivery optimization into this ACO community of health enterprise risk and management, with the overall goal being to drive to personalized medicine for individual patients delivered through these ACO models that are wrapped around a patient-centered medical home kind of concept. And as you move up the scale, the quality and the efficiency and the outcomes improve. Okay, next slide, Donna. Here's another proof in the pudding, so to speak, that of all of the PCMH studies and pilots that have been done over the past few years, that this stuff does work. Here's some stats from 30 pilots in the federal employee program that show marked improvements in outcomes on a population level. So the key to taking our $2.7 trillion spend down to about $1 trillion, is wrapped in this PCMH theory. And then I think there's one more slide, Donna. So, kind of wrapping up our point of view, we're looking at provider consolidation that is accelerating. As providers consolidate into health systems, the ability to afford more and more technologies are there. But medical homes are in demand. that most people with the wherewithal are looking on how to take their practices into a medical home kind of concept. Wrapping those in an ACO-based thinking, it's evolving, and new partnerships are evolving. A lot of hospitals are forming ACOs. There are payers that are forming ACOs. To me, some of the more successful ones are the physician-based ACOs, because this really is driven from a primary care kind of perspective. Competitors are becoming partners or co-opetition, if you will. A lot of payers are reconsidering the staff model from the 80s, and as the solution here, buying up the entire supply chain, and competing on that basis. New places and types of care are on the increase. Surgery centers, have been around for a while, but now we're looking at, Walmart getting into the healthcare business, Walgreens and CVS putting in a clinic type of operations, and what they handle are a specific set of diagnoses. Kind of taking the cream off the top, so to speak. And consumer health is indeed the mantra that everybody is chanting. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it is all about the consumer. In the end game, not really all that clear, but it's clear that the industry is engaged and that we're moving forward in that general direction. I think there's a lot of agreement, if you talk about what is healthcare going to look like 20 years from now. The issues are more, what's it going to look like 5 years from now and 3 years from now. That's more of the issue. So with that, let me turn you back to Brian.
Okay, so thanks, Bob. Thanks for joining us. Thanks so much. I think the information has been engaging. It's been certainly interesting. Let me talk about a little bit the three pillars, if you will, of healthcare reform before I really jump into Synchrony. I think we all know about improving the quality of care. There are various ways to improve the quality of care, to lower the cost of care. Synchrony sits in the patient experience box, if you will. The ACO meaningful use measures, 5 or 6 of those deal with patient experience, patient satisfaction, and Synchrony fits squarely in that end of the healthcare transformation and improving the quality of care. Again, you could probably, around the improved quality of care, you could probably add 3 or 4 additional bubbles of your own around that. In terms of enabling healthy living, I think that the key here is wellness programs, and you see the boxes on the right. Those speak to wellness programs, the savings that wellness programs are driving. We're seeing a partnership of payers and providers, payers marketing wellness programs, providers delivering and ensuring that wellness programs are being, that people are going through the programs, that we're getting measurements from the programs, and the programs are successful. And that's an area where you'll see with Synchrony integrated with IBM's enterprise marketing management suite that we can really provide value and not only in marketing the wellness programs, but again in follow-up and in measuring the effectiveness of the wellness programs. So where are we? We look at the customer experience around what Bob was talking about. It's all about patient engagement. It's about patient feedback. It's about superb access to care. And you think about the large providers, the large plans, where we do have a brand promise. We don't have a brand promise yet at the PCP level, but at some point the PCPs will have their branding. They'll have their website. They'll be able to talk about the patient or member experience that they're trying to drive to. and that the patient and member expects. Now, the challenge is, you look at the provider in the middle of the diagram who's trying to deliver on that brand promise through every interaction, and they're trying to balance IT systems, applications, data, policies, privacy concerns, domain knowledge and expertise, manual systems, regulatory standards and mandates, technical knowledge and experience. And all at a time when we've got skills shortages, we're going to look into the future. We're going to have even a more acute problem in terms of skills shortages. We're going to be bringing in consequently lower skilled people into the delivery chain, and to expect them to take all of that information and then deliver the patient or member experience that is expected is very difficult and a huge challenge. It's a challenge not only if this is a 10-person clinic, but multiply that by 1,000, 10,000 to 20,000 people delivering, people providing care in the larger plans and the larger provider networks. And there's no way that those 10 or 20,000 people are all going to be able to deliver on that brand promise through every interaction. So next slide, please. So in terms of the Cincom and our strategic priorities for healthcare, it's really using smarter interactions. And we'll talk more about that, about dynamic guidance capabilities to assist healthcare organizations. And really the three pillars address rising healthcare costs. We focus on designing high-value interactions that eliminate wasteful effort. We focus on having the right data at the right time for the right patient. We focus on making sure that data is entered accurately, for example, at the registration desk to improve revenue cycle time. And so we are doing quite a bit in terms of addressing the rising healthcare costs and helping in that area. In terms of improving the quality of care, and I'll talk more about guidance, but delivering guidance to reduce or eliminate errors, to deliver the excellent patient experience, the experience that the patient or member expects, whether that's face-to-face, whether that's in a registration desk, whether that is over the phone, whether it's in even a call center related to, especially to payers. In terms of developing healthier communities, again, self-guided, self-service. We apply dynamic guidance to self-service as well. And I also want to talk about here, again, the marketing of wellness programs, IBM Enterprise Marketing that the suite that we integrate very well with, and then onto the payer side or provider side of those wellness programs and actually tracking that those programs are being used and are working correctly. Next slide, Donna. So I've been around long enough that I know what guidance meant for me years ago, and if I wanted to travel from Chicago to Dallas, I would get out the local Chicago map, get out an atlas for all the states between Illinois and Texas. I'd get out the local Dallas map, and then I would start to get out my red pen and draw my particular route from point A to point B, from Chicago to Dallas. Well, as soon as I drew that line on that map, that was fixed. So if a road was closed, if there were detours, if traffic jams, accidents, weather that happened along that roadway, there was no way that I was going to know that ahead of time, no way that I would be detouring around that. And in essence, that guidance, if you will, was set when the map was printed. Again, if there are road closures or detours that happen between the time that map was printed and the time I want to travel, then I simply don't know about that, and I'm going to have difficulties in my travels. Now, I think that if you can switch to the next slide, Don. And so I think that at least I've got two of these devices, one on my phone and one in my car, that provides me dynamic guidance. And so I put in a starting point, I put in an end point of where I want to end up, and the GPS will guide me step by step from point A to point B. It will recognize detours along the way. It will recognize traffic. It will recognize weather and route me around that. I can leave my route. I own the steering wheel, even though I'm being guided. And so I can leave the route to get something to eat, to stop for the night, and then pick up the next day. And the GPS device will create a route from my current point to my final destination. And so that's really the dynamic nature. No longer are we do we have a printed map. Even when you use something like Yahoo Maps, Google Maps, MapQuest, it may have up-to-date information, but again, as soon as you print that map out, that is now set. And if there's something that happens on the roadway, on your route between point A and point B, then you're going to be challenged to get to your destination. And we all know that to that GPS, you can purchase additional options, if you will, and additional information, additional data that the GPS can go out and get to navigate. May have a list of restaurants in the area, a list of service stations, a list of coffee shops, a list of points of interest. Again, you may have purchased a weather package where it will show weather up ahead on your GPS, or even traffic jams, traffic flow, etc., so that you can make appropriate adjustments and with the guidance and help of the GPS device. So, Don, if you could put the next slide, please. So, Synchrony is all about delivering interactions, and it's all about delivering interactions that are smarter. And I'll show you what we mean by smarter. You'll see a demonstration what we mean by smarter. But on the left, if you remember that picture a few slides ago, we have the core hostile information systems, all our other supporting systems, our manual data. We've got our CRM systems. With typical IT solutions, we can integrate some of that data, some of those applications. We can unify some of them to eliminate some of the copying and pasting, some of the multiple lookups of data, multiple sign-ons, access to back-end systems, etc. But at the end of the chain, we still have the human being. And again, the more knowledge, the more systems, the more information we give to that person at the end of the chain, the more they become a constraint in the interaction. And so the manual method of eliminating that constraint is we hire well, we train well, we supervise closely, record constantly, fix errors, and redo the skips, retrain if necessary, and we end up constraining that interaction by what that human being can absorb, what that human being can deal with all the systems. Our interactions are also constrained. Right now, if you go on self-service and start an interaction, start some sort of lookup, get halfway through a transaction, and then need to call up the contact center, you need to start all over again. Or if you start in the contact center, need to go to face-to-face, need to drive into the clinic, typically you have to start all over again with that interaction. And so not only are we constrained from a human standpoint, but our interaction is constrained, especially as we cross channels. So that's kind of the before picture. And Don, if we can go to the next slide. Now the after picture is where we put Synchrony with smarter interactions, with guidance, with personalization, so that our guidance is determined based on who's delivering the service, who's receiving the service, what channel we're in when delivering the service, and all that is consistent across channels. We are now able to start an interaction in one channel, whether it be self-service, face-to-face, contact center, and move that to another channel seamlessly, pick up right where we left off, and the guidance and everything adjusts dynamically, just as it would if we were in a GPS, using a GPS device and happen to leave the road for some personal side trip, and our guidance would then again pick up and route us back to the right place. And so the guidance and personalization of Synchrony, again, is all about smarter interactions. It's about removing the non-value-added, non-mandatory waste in the interactions. It's about automating the non-value-added, but mandatory, regulatory, policy-driven parts of an interaction, and really driving value into the interaction, leading to a dynamic, personalized, and accurate experience for the customer, member, or patient. So Synchrony is not all about simply software. We do have a methodology, and I'll just briefly mention that here, where we do customer insights, audits, look at interactions, audit interactions. We design a new customer experience around better, more streamlined interactions, design the interaction guidance that goes along with that, and we bring in our enabling technology, which is our real-time guidance to drive organizational behavior, and it really to deliver a transformed experience that can be measured. And we look for C-suite measurements to be affected by the interactions and what we're trying to drive. And so it's very valuable, very visible measurements that we believe can be moved and improved with guidance applied to the interactions. Again, we have a joint approach with IBM. We frequently bring IBM in on most of our new projects, taking a look at strategic customer experience management, where we want to be, looking at the business transformation that needs to go along with that. Again, jointly with IBM, looking at what we need to enable to make that business transformation occur, which leads to strategic customer experience management. Next slide, Donna. So just a few slides to bring the point home on how Synchrony can deliver value. And we'll just cycle through these pretty quickly. We can move to lower cost delivery channels with guidance. We can move work to lower skilled people by guiding them and making sure that the interaction is accurate and delivering a very excellent patient experience. Actually showing only the data that's relevant, only the application or component of an application that's relevant at a given point in an interaction. We lower the skill requirements at those delivering on the front lines, those providing care. We can also help reduce errors. Our guidance actually sits on top of registration applications today, and in several large providers, where it's watching what's being typed in at the registration desk and fixing errors, or at least noting errors that the registration application may not be catching. And so by reducing errors at registration, we reduce errors downstream. We help with reduce the revenue cycle, help with this costly remediation and going back and forth between payer and provider. And can also ensure proper discharge follow-up. We've got a portion of Synchrony that deals with outbound communication, and we can schedule outbound communication and watch the data that's coming back to ensure that the discharge discharge follow-up is happening correctly, and then drive improvements in that discharge follow-up or changes as necessary. In the interest of time, I do want to make sure that we leave time for the Q&A at the end. Why don't we move to the turn the session to Randy and move to the demonstrations.
What we're going to show, and it's just a brief demonstration, but hopefully it will give you a feel for how we're providing that guidance, taking less skilled employees and making them more productive. What Bob talked about is having more of a team-based care delivery approach where we can coordinate this care across channels and so forth. So the demonstration starts by we're using the IBM Unica marketing management system. It's really a communications management system that helps you refine and define the right communications for different types of patients, depending on what kind of treatment plan they are, what age bracket they're in, and so forth. So we'll start with a flu shot campaign is what we're going to start with, that we'll look at what channels various patients have as a preferred channel, and we'll take you through some structured guidance in our patient outreach care center. So that'll be the first scenario. We'll kind of show a closed loop system of that. And then the second scenario, it'll be more of a coordinated care visit where a diabetes patient is following up on their treatment plan, and you'll see how we provide the guidance there. It's a little bit more it's more dynamic than the structured guidance I showed you in the first iteration. Again, we tap into Unica to get related recommendations for that individual patient. And then at the end, we're going to also generate a personalized recap document that details all the things we talked about and gives that individual patient some things to read and follow up on. So with that, if you can turn control to me, Donna. Okay. Now, if you're seeing my desktop now, what I've actually done is gone to the IBM Unica system where I brought up a campaign that I've previously decimated on. It's fairly simple outreach campaign, but this would be our annual flu shot campaign. And what we start with here is, I'll go ahead and go in edit mode on here. This is all just kind of point and click, drag boxes over for the various function you want in your flow chart to do this. But my first box just selects people that are eligible for a flu shot. Somebody that a doctor has said you shouldn't have a flu shot. We don't want to reach out to them. And this is an outbound campaign, so it's kind of a traditional outbound campaign. And I have a governor on this one just for our testing size here that I'm going to limit this based on just 200 records to go through and make sure that my logic is right. Then my next box here, what I do is I determine what segment each patient is based on their contact preference. So do they prefer to be contacted by postal mail, email, or called during this time? And if I look at, for example, the postal mail qualification, if that the preferred channel is direct mail, then they're included in that segment. So what this will do, and you'll see it as I start to run this, it'll go through the different phases of my flow here. So pick out 200 random patients for me, run through our profiling to find out what the preferred contact preference is, and then from there process the postal list, the email list, and the call list. So let me go ahead and, well, first of all, just validate my flow chart is in fact good. There's no errors in any of my syntax or anything. Then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and let's test run it. And what you'll notice as it's running here, it's selected the 200 people. Now you'll see it's on this next box here where it's looking at their various preferences. And now it's going down to do my processing box for postal mail, email, and the call list. If I mouse over this, I can see that it's exported 21 people that have their preferences being called. And if I look in this, I'll see that I'm exporting this actually to just a flat common delimited file. And then we call our Synchrony transfer routine that will transfer this into Synchrony so that the people in our care center can then contact these people that prefer to be called that way. As far as what I'm sending there, it was really easy for me to pick just what fields I wanted. So it's all their contact information, as well as I've got some variables in terms of which Synchrony campaign list do they belong to, and some other data. So that's being sent over there. So that's kind of how you construct a campaign, and you build this into building blocks. So if I said, for example, that I want to schedule this to run, a custom run, and it's going to be, every October or something like that, I could set this campaign up that way, and it would run it at that time. But anyway, the list has been constructed. It's run. So if I go over to Synchrony now and log on to my Synchrony account, what I'll see is I'm assigned to 2 different campaigns. I'm doing diabetes checkups, and in this case, I'm going to follow up on those patients that wanted to be contacted as part of their flu shot. So I'll go ahead and say that I'm ready to go, ready and start my work with my flu shot. And of course, this automatically queues the list for as many people as I have in my care center. I have some other resources here that I have access to in terms of flu shot guidance and so forth if I need more information. But this is an example of structured guidance. So what we're doing here is it said that I'm calling Diane Cleveland, and when I contact her, when I call there, I just click on this to call. What it tells me is if the patient isn't there, so I've asked for Diane, she's not there, is it because I had an answer machine or she's deceased or whatever it might be? When I tag that, that gets fed back into the database so that if it's an answering machine or just not home, we'll automatically recycle that. Otherwise, if I actually reached her, then okay, I've reached Diane, it goes through and helps me with what I've called her about, which is the annual flu shot. Do you have time to talk about that now? And she said, yes, I would like to schedule that. So we remind her that last year she came to our Mason clinic for the flu shot. Would you like to return there to get your flu shot this year? And Diane was selected in this list because of some ailments she has, or she's just on a high-risk group that we want to make sure she has a flu shot. So we schedule this. And now I confirm that I've scheduled it. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is give her a call, a reminder the day before. That's automatically scheduled through Synchrony. So either myself or one of our other care representatives will call her back to make sure that she's reminded of that. And then as we wrap it, and we could go through other things here as well, but one of the things we do as we finish is we go to Unica and we find out what other recommendations do you have for Diane. And because she happens to be a cardiac patient, we get some specific offers about a new ebook we have or a brochure on working with her heart monitor, and then also the flu shot. So those kinds of offers come up. Now, where that came from, the first campaign I showed you was actually a batch campaign. Let me just cancel all of this. And this one was more of an interactive campaign. So no matter if somebody is on our website, they're talking to one of our care representatives in our call center, or a face-to-face visit, what happens is that Unica will keep track of everything we know about the patient and make relevant recommendations to them. So what the logic looks like for something like this, and in the interest of time I'll go through this pretty quickly, is we have this interactive flow chart which first gets their profile, very similar to the other chart, is we find out what segment they're in, and then based on that, we put them in a segment and we populate the segment. So let me just run it real quick. And what happens when I run this, it'll show me, again, I've asked it to do just a population of 30 people, just in the interest of time here. And if I review the results of that, I'll find that for our test sample here, the patient number 1 actually fell into 3 segments. They happen to be flu shot eligible, they're a cardiac patient, and everybody gets assigned to our default segment so that we have some recommendations for everybody, even if they don't fall into one of our other groups we've already segmented. Patient number 2, on the other hand, happens to have diabetes, so that they fall into all of these segments. They're flu shot eligible, they have diabetes, etc. So people can fall in one or more segments. So somebody's responsible for segmenting the patients on what kind of categories do they fall into. And then somebody else says, well, what recommendations do we have for these various types of patients? And so that's what I'll go back to now, is actually look at what the campaign strategy looks like for that particular patient. So if we look at our interactive strategy, if they're cardiac patients, well, here's several things I have from them. And this is how, when we looked at this, that came back from Synchrony in terms of the ebook on cardiac and so forth. These were because of our offer strategy, our recommendation strategy. So these rules are all enabled, and then we put kind of scoring in terms of how relevant that particular our offer, the nutrition ebook for a cardiac patient, is a very relevant offer a recommendation for a cardiac patient. And these other ones, like if you look down at my default segment, I put everybody in that. They would be eligible for a general exercise guide, nutrition guide, but if they fall into one of my other segments, I want to make sure that they get those offers. So that's kind of how this dynamically works. And again, we keep track of, have you been on our website? Have you been contacted by our contact center? And based on this, we look at which offers did you take us up on, and which ones did you not take us up on, so we can give you more relevant offers as we learn more about you. So that's the example of structured guidance with Unica driving that. Now, the other type of guidance I talked about was more adaptive guidance, and this example is more of a face-to-face example where we've got the diabetes patient coming in for their follow-up. Give me a second to sign on here. What happens here is when the patient comes in, I'm just going to go through this part quick so I can get to more of the adaptive part, is we'll find out who the patient is. There's some statistics about this patient. But let me just get into their wellness plan follow-up. Again, this is a diabetes patient, so we're going to go through a specific treatment plan. And I'll call this demo treatment plan for their diabetes follow-up. And what the Synchrony Adaptive Guidance System is going to do is look at everything we know about this patient, previous visits, and so forth, and decide that the first thing we need to do is check on their physical symptoms, because either we've seen some things in the past where they may have had dizziness or some other characteristics. It goes through and it prompts us. So what this is telling us is this is a required category that we go through, and then all the asterisk means these are some required categories that I need more information on. The other ones we can also put things in. So these first three are required, that we need to know some things about typical diabetes ailments, their vision and so forth. So I'll just put some, how blurred is your vision compared to what it was last time and so forth. And then something like numbness is not required, but the patient tells me, I've experienced some numbness as well. So we said, well, how bad has it been? So we get some information about that. And I've now selected all my physical symptoms, and then it wants to go into the area of problems and concerns as the next category. Now, if I wanted to go into emotions and feelings because they're telling us they've been feeling some anxiety lately or whatever, we can go in whatever order we want, and the adaptive guidance system will make sure we get all the information we need today. But again, in the interest of time, let me just kind of go through this one quickly, that their excessive thirst is not really lingering anymore. We've finished all those. And I just need to get a couple of vital signs before I end today. Such as their blood A1C count, blood sugar, and have they had any weight variation, because that was a problem in their past visit. So yeah, they've changed by about 4 pounds from the last visit. So now, and we see that's kind of a warning area there. The blood A1C is a little high for a diabetes patient, but it's not in the danger zone. But from this, I'm just going to quickly go to recommendations, because from that, we'll get some recommendations, including some advanced recommendations. So again, we go back to Unica and say, Unica, based on this new information I'm feeding you about this patient, what kind of recommendations do we have? Well, we happen to have a new diabetes seminar, Living with Diabetes, that came back for this patient out of the Unica recommendation engine, as well as a nutrition guide for diabetes. Now, this patient also happens to have a cardiac condition, so that offer comes up as well. So again, these are dynamic offers based on who the patient is. And I'm going to go ahead and end this, because as I told you, at the end of the guidance, what we do is we give the patient, we hand them a personalized report of the things we talked about today, some other things that are relevant to them. So I'll just go ahead and launch that. What will happen is it says, for our visit today, it's generating the document. This is not not a static document, but it's generated with where it puts in some dynamic conditions. It's got a QR code in it, so when they take it home, if they want to learn more information, they can quickly scan it. We've got the information about Victor Smith, our patient we were just dealing with, the diabetes patient, with some text about the visit itself. We give them some of their vital statistics and so forth. Nothing seems out of the ordinary here. But again, we give them more information on these recommendations, including description and some barcodes. They can scan with their smartphone if they have that and go right to it. So that's kind of an end-to-end example of both an outreach campaign and more of a patient comes in to the clinic and an interactive campaign. So that's I rushed through it kind of quick in the interest of time. That'll give you an idea of how the adaptive guidance comes in and how we dynamically personalize everything for the patient along every step of the way. So with that, Donna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
So I'll go through these briefly. I know we're over a lot of time a little bit, but we do have some pretty good stories in terms of healthcare clients. You may have heard of Health Advocate. They take care of healthcare benefits for a very large population. They've got millions of members through their 5,000 or so client relationships. Cincom Synchrony is their contact center platform, and what they've been able to do is through efficiencies and guidance to reduce staff to subscriber ratios by 50% and decrease case resolution time by 20%, really saving them quite a bit in terms of what their staff was doing and being able to control their growth in staff, reduce the customer search time. And what was really great for Health Advocates, and we've heard this from so many customers, is to reduce training requirements through not only guidance but through unified agent testing.
Okay, Brian, I'm thinking, Brian, just in the interest of time that we've already gone over the hour. Donna and I were just talking that maybe it's best for any questions that we have that they would send them to Donna in the host chat window, and we'll follow up with all the questions afterwards with each and every question that people submit to us.
If you need to ask a question at a later point in time or offline, absolutely you can send that to me, bflag, that's B-F-L-A-G-G, at cincom.com. If it's a question for Bob on any of his material, it's rhoyt at us.ibm.com. And again, thanks for your patience today. I hope the webinar has proven to be useful. I hope you saw something of the challenges, maybe nuggets out there that you had not considered before, or something that may have been new to you. And in any case, I hope the webinar was informative and insightful. And again, thank you for joining. Any questions? Again, follow-up questions you can either put in the chat window here on the webinar, or again, bflag at cincom.com, or rhoyt, R-H-O-Y-T, at us.ibm.com. Thanks again, and we will end the webinar at this point.
All right, thank you, everyone.